Let's start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. So today we have two conferences in English. And for today, the topic is urban air resources. For the first session of this moment, we have Riccardo PORRECA is associate researcher at the Institute Regional Science in Karlsruhe. J'arrive jamais à le dire. And later we will have Nils LE BOT, is associate professor in ENSA Paris-Val de Seine. So you will see for the first intervention is Un-designable. What are you doing there, architecture? And then I will introduce Nils after that. So Riccardo, thank you.
See this image. Try to read, to understand this landscape. Imagine living in a very steep slope nearby an active volcano. When the earth trembles, you feel it. When the volcano talks, you're scared. When it rains a lot, you have to run. This is Quito. This is Santa Clara de San Millán. And it's a very vulnerable and fragile territory. But it's also a territory that can adapt, a resilient territory. Today, I invite you to walk with me on the path of a completely different environment, completely different culture. I dare you to understand another form of seeing and feeling habitat. So the question, what is doing there architecture? Is there architecture? Talking about Quito, it's very difficult if you didn't experience such a big, risky environment where daily you can die, you can have a big problem with flooding, with earthquake, with volcanoes. It's a very narrow valley of 5 kilometers for 50-kilometer length. And his topography is made by a very abrupt geographical accident that jump down for 10 meters. And you have a mountain, a volcano that in a few meters jump up for 1,000 meters. And the urban tissue is made by conventional neighborhoods, the main neighborhoods you have here in Paris or whatever, but also by ancestral settlements. Settlements that have more or less 3,000–4,000 years. But following the trace is very difficult. But there's something that still remains. The form of appropriating the territory, the form of building morphology and a kind of typology. Today we are going to do a deep dive into Santa Clara de San Millán. This was the first ancestral comuna recognized by the president of Ecuador in 1911. It is a symbolic moment where ancestral community were recognized in the constitution, and up to now they benefit by a kind of self-government. So they have their own rules to manage their territory. Of course, it's not for free. It's a negotiation, it's a struggle between the pressure of urban growth and neoliberal rules, neoliberal paradigm of urban growth. And of course, there are many interests in developing this area that is very near to the economic center of the country. Imagine that if just half a kilometer from here, there is the beautiful embassy of Italy with a huge forest in their territory, and 3 kilometers toward the center of Quito, there is the neighborhoods of ministries and a big company, international company. So the price of land is rising, and there are many interesting in this area that it's common. There's no public or private property. It's common property, communal property. It's the land. It's the ownership is a communal ownership. It's kind of different paradigm. But how does Santa Clara, this ancestral area, looks like? So you can see by yourself. Beautiful landscape, beautiful panorama, but kind of informal. So it's kind of informal outfit, isn't it? But Santa Clara has an essential paradigm, materiality. In Santa Clara still remain the trace of Incaic walls, also the modern heritage, because in the past century there was the place where the bricks were made. Today is just a memory of someone. There is only one storage point of bricks, and there still remains some efforts to merge the system. Of course, there are a lot of contemporary materials, concrete or cobblestones, wood, and whatever. So we cannot see that there is a very beautiful image, but we have at least 3 or 4 layers of traces that people do not see. And day by day, also, the vernacular typology disappears. And the landscape looks like a bad copy of modernism heritage. However, still remains something that is very ancestral, that is very local made, that is this trace that connect different points, different streets that locally are named pasajes or passage allées. These are essential parts of this territory. But, the role of pasaje is not only visual, it's not only an intuition, but by using a morphogenetic approach, we discovered that in the upper parts of the comuna, that is divided into 2, the lower one that is more metabolized and the upper one that is more not dense in process of density. In both parts, you can see that year by year, decade by decade, many passages, many passages build the morphological structure and actually suggest a kind of typology, micro typology, 2-3 stories, not more. So the density is high sometimes, but the height of the building are very low. So finally, there is a kind of pattern in the morphology, but it looks like difficult. It's difficult to recognize this order in the townscape. However, this form of appropriate the territory actually is not in contrast with the urban growth. Actually, the lower part of Comuna is completely metabolized by the urban growth. System of passage completely match, fit, or dialogue with normal, with conventional urban structure. And of course, day by day, year by year, there is a kind of densification process that more or less are creating a kind of homogeneity. By using this approach, that is space syntax, we discover also this two level of these two narratives. By using space syntax, we calculated integration with the city. When we talk about Comuna de Santa Clara, that should be an ancestral and self-government area, we discovered that the upper part on the left side is more isolated. Okay, as blue as the line is, as isolated is. That's why when it's red, it means that it's very integrated with the context. But by seeing Comuna, the Comuna de Santa Clara has a normal neighborhoods, the left part looks like isolated. But when we use the eyes and the culture of local members of Comuna, the comuneros, we discover, since they are very proud, they see the Comuna as a center of their world, and when we repeat the exercise in the shape of the Comuna, we discover that the upper part is more integrated. So social relationship on the upper part are more genuine, are more ancestral in a kind of trying to following their way to understand the form of living in appropriate territory than the lower part. So the more urban part is not so connected with the identity of living together that the Comuna has. So I also ask myself if this environment has a morphological paradigm of if, in case of yes, how it works. So we try to analyze many majority of the extension of the both parts of Santa Clara. So I will save time because I have many slides of this, but I only upload 2 of them because, of course, could be very boring and very long. We try to understand how the morphological system is working there, we created an ad hoc matrix, and we went there with a huge students to survey not plot by plot, because plot it's almost it's a very strange concept for them because they don't have plots in general. They have another kind of approach, and maybe I'm going to talk about this case. But something interesting is that the cadastral plotting tissue do not fit with reality, because they don't use what Soleil Morales said, I mean, plotting system, urbanization, and then building. They build because they need a house, for example, for a family, so they together build this house and then create infrastructure or whatever. So these are parts of many analyses we made, and of course there are many lines that overlap because they don't follow the normal rules of, okay, cadastral or technical instrument, GIS and whatever. Actually, this is part of the struggle they have with municipality. And finally, the results of this big amount of analysis is that the strategy they use to appropriate and transform the territory is by building yard that is used for small agricultural actions, and finally the passage that is the small infrastructure, essential infrastructure to get their home, but also to have a micro relationship with families and with the neighbors. This is very essential for them. They live they follow the the community feeling. They need the community. They identify themselves as a comuneros. They cannot separate individuality with common community identity. And this is the same with the territory. They don't have the property of their house. They have this house because they need it, but in case they don't have sons, for example, and if a couple doesn't have a son, finally this house comes back to community, to communal leaders, and then they assignate this house to those who needs it. So I asked myself if it's just my fantasy, because I'm an architect and I try to find something, and actually it's something related to poverty, it's very bad environments, any aesthetics value. So I asked myself this. That's why I made a very intense qualitative survey through 28 in-depth interviews with local leaders, comuneros, experts, academics, and public officers. So I discovered that there is actually an official communal governance made by 5 persons in this local governments named Cabildo, and is directly related to the ministry. They have 3 types of codified co-production. So they negotiate, first of all, with the municipality, because they don't depend on municipality, but they negotiate with municipality to get or to share infrastructure resources, because they have, for example, 3 or 4 sources of water, and they negotiate with the municipality. They negotiate internally between Cabildo and comuneros, and they negotiate also with external actors like university and association to put together resources and efforts and create something in common. That's why co-production. And then I understand also that through documental analysis, I read many of their books, register of assembly that they monthly do, and I discover another interesting things. So between 2022 and 2023, they have approved and developed at least 30 passages in co-production. So they use an approach that they call 50 and 50, based on the concept of Minga, the collective work in the Andean area, where Cabildo, as the leaders of the governments of Comuna, put 50% of materials, machinery, etc., and the rest of the efforts is made by neighbors that collectively construct the pasaje. So at least it's not my fantasy. I think it's not my fantasy because there is a rule, there is a process, there is a kind of strategy to actually create, to actually feed this process. And then an ethnographic research that demonstrate that this General Assembly monthly decide which project must be prioritized and which ones, on the other hand, is not useful, is not do not fit the common interest. That's why this kind of project is not funded. Actually, and I'm going. I'm very near to conclude. I found an absolutely surprising network of actors, at least 28 actors that are negotiating with Cabildo and that are providing services as CAC, that is a Center of Architecture Consultancy that is powered by Universidad Central del Ecuador, the School of Architecture, that for free offers consultancy to avoid technical problem and to avoid landslides and something more. So there is at least a kind of alliance for habitat, so a group of external actors that are working on the habitat issues. Alliance for Water, other actors that are working to save and to manage the water system, and also for heritage. So finally we made a co-production lab and we discovered many things. In this slide we were able to remap the ancestral sectors with the ancestral name that were not registered anywhere. We rediscovered the original extension of Comuna through documents and interview. And finally, in this very bad cartography, is not beauty, I'm very sorry, we trying to see how impactful is the co-production system. And everything there on the right side that has color means that is touched by, has a consequence, is experiencing a positive consequence of co-production. So this is something that we produce with them, with people. Of course, we produce technical cartography, but information were made, were created, were produced in common with citizens. If you want to see something more about this case study, there are these three documents available on the web. So what do you see now? Is this landscape communicating the same that at the beginning? There are some architecture that do not follow the normal path, the conventional path, do not born through or for normal or technical rules or technical processes. There are some architecture that appears only when we stop measuring territory and start belonging to it. Architecture begins when we stop drawing boundary and start listening to relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Riccardo. And second intervention is, as already told you, Nils LE BOT. And the title is Material Degrowth, What We Can Learn from a Temporary Station. It's a question. This is the question.
Yes, great. Thank you. Thank you, Riccardo, for your lecture. Super interesting. We have talked about adaptation, essentiality, ecology, and I would like to continue questioning formal and informal architecture. Here we have seen a sort of bottom-up approach directly from the land, from the inhabitant, coming from the inhabitant perspective, and how does they build, and how could we interrogate the way that we see what is architecture by looking at this type of example. And I would like to present you another approach. It's more a top-down approach. It's more how I, using ecological analysis, I land on these essentialities that are the link we have together. Just one second before, I just would like to present myself because it's part of the context. I'm a train station designer, so I work in a practice with specialized in transport, in railway and railway station in especially, and I'm also teaching in this School of Architecture. So as I told you, the object I design the most is a railway station, and in my practice we were used to build this giant and quite interesting building to actually have this railway system working. But this railway system and this station challenge us nowadays because we have to deal with three main heritage that I would like to present you. First of all, the railway system has a huge ecological footprint, and it's an heritage that we have to deal with, and it's obliged us to rethink the way that we design the train station. The railway system has also a huge land footprint. When we have built the railway systems in the last century, we destroyed a lot of environment, land, environment area, and we use a lot of land to produce this system. And nowadays we have to deal with artificialization issues and stop this manner to actually develop the railway system. And we also have a third heritage. It's an unsustainable imaginaries, because the way that we had to produce train station was generally linked to building this super giant, transparent and technological architecture, actually to make inside a lot of commercial activities to make the space profitable and have the opportunity to rebuild the station and to increase and modernize the existing stations. It was an economical balance in this type of projects. But nowadays, as you know, if railway system is a sort of testament of Anthropocene, we have to switch to another way to deal with this system and to reintroduce the ecological question inside this system. So nowadays we are seeing a shift of paradigm in the railway design and the railway station design. In my practice, we start a transition to post-carbon design by thinking about how we could build metabolic stations. That means that stations that are included in their environment. I will come back to that in a few minutes. And make them compatible with a post-carbon future, so a future with an energetical transition. There is also a shift in urban planning nowadays. The way that we were used to build stations in the last 30 years was by making transit-oriented development, so by building around station huge district to actually concentrate the density and the habitation around the station. And this model nowadays doesn't work really anymore because it produces a lot of gentrification, ecological issues, and so on. So we try to shift to a post-growth planning, and there is many books that are actually pushing in this direction nowadays, and that I invite you to read and look at it. And there is also a transition in the way that we see the mobility. The railway system was really focused on speed the last 50 years, especially when we have developed high-speed trains. The most important was the speed of the train and the speed of the system. And nowadays, we see that there is other way to imagine our traveling, especially because I hope you all in this room try to use less planes because of the footprint of the airplane system. So this three transition invites us to reimagine the way to build a railway station. So in my research, I have done a first catalog of what designers around the world, our colleague, how does they build new station, and this is what they consider as the flagship of eco-friendly design stations they are able to produce nowadays. Most of them are built with wood or have solar panel on the top and a bit of greenery around. But around this beautiful object, they are still too often forgetting environment. They are building objects, but they are not building a site. They are not building how this site discuss with the environment. And when you are interested by really, a deep ecological approach, installing solar panel and using biomaterial and having a eco-friendly or eco-design friendly, it's really the start of what you can do. And there is a huge hidden part of the iceberg that is better insulating, using low-tech, reusing material, downsizing, maintaining, and degrow the size of what you do. And this hidden part of the iceberg is generally a bit hide. Nobody talk about it because as architect we think, okay, I have done my best, my building is green and it's quite okay, I have done my part. But we can do so much more. And and there is also a literature that also challenge us today to rethink about the way we also design by building with what remain, take care of the existing things, especially existing architecture, building with low tech and considering how we can degrow our architecture. In my design approach, I use this hierarchy of decisions that you could do on a building process, and as you can see, depending how you interrogate your project, you can have a more low-tech or a more ecological friendly impact. Generally, we all of us here focus on the three last words you see here, so by reusing material, recycling material, and try to recoup and save the most energy we can. But we can also refuse to build. We can also reduce the size of what we do. We can find existing square meter in existing buildings. We can modernize existing buildings. So there is so much things that we can do before building. And I think it's this way of thinking helped me to also interrogate what is the real impact of architecture and how our manner to work and build should change. To continue this interrogation, for the past few months, with a colleague of mine, Pauline de Tavernier, I know she can be here today, but we have worked and focus our research on temporary stations. We believe that there is a lot to learn in their simplicity, in their minimalist, and in their frugality. So we have made a collection of temporary stations. Now, normally, these temporary stations are used to when there is a temporary event, or when there is a building site and we can't use the existing station, we build another little station next to it. That shows us that we are able actually to build things really minimalist, really tiny, that actually keep the possibility to people, to users, to actually have an access to the train. And that's actually the most important for a train station, is to give an access to the trains. The rest, covering people, giving them services, giving them shops, giving them a place, it's a sort of luxury that we could maybe all of us here interrogate. Do we really need a cathedral of modernity to just being inside 5 minutes before taking the train? Of course, sometimes you need more time in a train station. Sometimes you need 1 hour because you take an important train for a long trip and you have you paid for your ticket so much that you don't want to miss your train. So of course, in this case, you arrive maybe 20, 30 minutes before, and in this case, you need a bigger place. But most of the railway traffic, most of the railway system work on people traveling from a point to another every day, like most of you here using RER or the equivalent in your city, or using metro, and actually we pass through station maybe during 5 minutes. So I think there is a sort of what could you learn from this essentiality that integrate me a lot. And as Riccardo say, is there architecture here? We could interrogate that because it's made by only little objects. Sometimes it's a bit ugly, but it works. And I think with this almost nothing station, we could reduce all the impact we have in our society, and we can divide the impact of railway system by, not by 20%, but we can divide it by 5, so by 500%. And for me, it's really important to think about this possibility, especially when we see that, as I told you, it's temporary stations. So, for example, here you have the E116 stations in Cleveland, Ohio, USA. At the left, you see the station as it was before 2015. So it's an heritage from the 70s. And the station was destroyed. So there was this temporary station in 2018 in the middle. And then they have redestroyed the temporary station to make a modernization. And you see how the station looks now with this huge concrete wall. Actually, in my point of view, a bit ugly and a bit sad, but actually what people ask for nowadays, or what they think that people ask for nowadays. So my point of view, it's what if the station of tomorrow is just that? It's just the temporary station in the middle. Actually, it brings exactly the same services, but you have a lower impact with this type of approach. And we can also go even further by actually looking this Sandy Solar Railway stop in Switzerland. I love this example because it's a no station. Actually, you have no station. You have just the railway track, the train stop. I imagine that you have the possibility to go inside by maybe a foot, a stair or something. I don't know. There is nothing, so I don't know. But it's in Switzerland. It works. There is a train every day. People using it, and there is no station. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nils. So we have some time for doing a discussion or maybe some question. Do you have some question? Any question?
Well, I have a quick remark for Nils. Thank you very much, both of you. A very quick remark. As a historian, I couldn't resist to that. It reminded me what the station was actually in the 19th century when it was invented. Because it was so simple, it was so functional, there was almost not at all architecture. And I was wondering if you are peeping in the project of the 19th century, the very first project.
Yes, of course. A part of the station we have analyzed with my colleague. Actually, it's an ongoing project, and it's not a finished project, what I'm showing here, because we are still thinking, and now we are conceptualize this work. But to go in your direction, we have looked at the first railway station in 1850, the beginning of railway station, and all of them were temporary stations because we were developing the train, and there was always this wood train station. So you can see, I have. Some of them here, this one is also a temporary station, maybe more for the 19th. But this one is a temporary station from this times. And yes, and we have seen that most of them were built with wood. But what was quite interesting, also many of them were built with also steel and stone. And for example, the first railway station of Paris-Gare du Nord were built in stone. There was a huge facade in stone, quite beautiful, but too tiny for the future of the station. So they decided to unbuild it and rebuild it in Lille, actually in north of France. So the actual main station of Lille was made with the facade of Gare du Nord, Paris-Gare du Nord train station. It's a reuse of material and a reuse of stones. And it's quite interesting the way that they were used to think about how to recycle architecture by moving it, actually. So it was not only a material approach, it was also a technical and architectonical approach. Yeah.
Right. Very quickly, I think that the first stations in UK were functional in the sense that the flow was the most important and there was almost no architecture. It was a distribution, while in France, the aesthetics was the most important, given the fact that it was important to how to say, to welcome people in a beautiful place. Yeah,
the way of designing station changed a lot during the history of architecture. It's a huge topic. Actually, I think we have not a lot of time to talk about that, but yeah, I agree with you. But it's also changed because the way where we were used to build stations at the beginning of the last century was changed super fast because every 10 years the building were rebuilt, enlarged, and so also all the manner to do were spread in Europe. So the English approach were used after a few years in other countries, and many way of building well was actually shared in Europe by all the company. And at the end, you see a sort of uniformization on how do we do station around the 19th century. Yeah. I don't know if I was super clear, but complicated.
Thank you. Other question?
And also about Riccardo position.
I would like to dialogue with you because, first of all, love your presentation. I mean, we talked about theoretically, but without picture and explanation. I mean, I really enjoyed your presentation. And something that came to my mind is that there is a kind of a linear relationship between what Elena yesterday presented and what you are suggesting us as a reflection. I mean, Elena yesterday talked about the carbon or energy storage in the building, and it's exactly what you are explaining right now. So this building are a kind of solution, I mean, the perfect application of the concept of sustainability and also a concept of resilience in terms of when people move, so when people, because day by day there will be more and more temporary events, not only station. So we need to be flexible also with our infrastructure, and I think it's also, I mean, since as you saw, I'm working with this kind of peripheral environment where the essentiality of infrastructure is powered by or because of poverty or because of a lack of resources, of geographical accident, etc. But in general, this environment more or less are influenced by the experience, the influence of our, as European, our design, our rules. So many times we did it in a colonial approach. So try to convince them that we are better than them. But actually, in this case, it could be the design and the design of this temporary station that can provide a kind of balance between aesthetics, functionality, sustainability, and so improve a kind of social impact in a way as a reflection around the principles of new European Bauhaus. And this synthesis could be useful for those peripheral areas that want to be better and want to build some cathedral, but they don't need it. So this could be also, a good opportunity to demonstrate that building, not transforming territory with a volumetric action could be not only a solution for sustainability, but also to improve aesthetics. And to discover the local impacts, because, for example, the photos that you shared are very crazy, because the temporary station in 2018, highlights kinds of vegetation that then disappears. So it's, just a reflection, because I find very promising. I think this is the future.
Actually, it's the way I try to interrogate architecture is to say, okay, as you say, the Occidental approach of building architecture is quite proud of itself, in my point of view. We are proud of our modernity, we were proud of the gigantic stuff that we are able to do, and also we were pushed by the market to increase all the time services and possibilities. The last wave was actually the digital design with all these screens and stuff like that. And it was always more and more and more and more. And by looking at this temporary station, but also I'm really also inspiring by this informal architecture coming from all around the world, where people are able to actually build with nothing, and also with an aesthetic that match with their will. And sometimes, because I'm sometimes a bit sad when I see in many countries population trying to match the aesthetic of Occidentality to be modern. And actually, the way that they build are more interesting than the way that we build. So what I think it's our climate is changing. So first of all, we could learn a lot from the global south of how should we deal with our infrastructure. And secondly, we could also learn a lot about this minimalism. And by walking on these 2 feet, I have the impression of making a better work in radical ecology, the department we are together with colleagues. And it's the best way for me to work, because the rest, for me, is just decoration and greenwashing. You know, it's just, when you see I have done a green roof, you have done nothing. You have just increased the impact of your building, and you should know it, but generally you don't know it. And the last things I wanted to say, it's also, my office is really linked to the engineering spirit, and we have a lot of engineering people in my office. And most of our design is led by calculation. And by looking this way on architecture, it's also a way to say, okay, but as architect, we have a lot to do without any calculation. And I can be sure that even if I haven't done the calculation precisely, I'm sure that it's a third of the impact of any other design, optimized design that we can do in another end. So it's also a way to say to the architect, you have the power to change the things and to have a huge impact on the environment, even if you are not able to calculate everything super precisely with huge models. So, and it also meets the new architectural bounds in a certain way.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I was just going to raise, you raised a crucial issue there between the functional or the engineering and the architecture in terms of beauty. And where do we draw that boundary? For example, when you arrive in a city center, I notice there's no city center stations here, but one would expect something greater than something just temporary. Or if you stay in a hotel, would you stay in an Ibis, or would you stay in a nicer place? The point is, we can still have a low ecological footprint, but still achieve beauty. And what I'm afraid of is that, you know, in the architecture students here, when hearing this, that, oh, well, we can't do anything beautiful because that's a superfluous luxury. And anything beautiful, i.e. architectural, will involve increasing my carbon footprint. But not really. And there's a certain element, what I appreciate in this lecture, and I want the students that are here with me from Scotland to appreciate, is that if you understand the fundamentals and simplicity of something, then you can start from there, rather than preconceived ideas, oh, I must do something better and bigger. And I think that's really important to get across. I just want to say that just for the students that are listening right now, but I appreciate they might not pick up the subtleties of your lecture. About that relationship.
Actually, it was praised, I think about it before showing this image, that it was a will for me to not show beautiful little objects. Because by showing that, I hope that our students here are telling to themselves, okay, I can do this stupid station, but much better by designing it perfectly and keeping it tiny. You know what I mean? So I don't want to actually apply on you a certain aesthetic of beauty, because what I would like to actually answer you back, it's who define what is beauty? Architects? Why? Why our aesthetic should be the beauty?
A very typical conversation with an engineer.
I'm not engineer at all, but...
To be continued over lunch.
No, because it's quite interesting to see that many buildings that we build around the world in any context, we think that it's beautiful, and population around thinks that it's ugly or uninteresting or not contextualized.
Yes.
So I think as architects, we should try also to interrogate of what is beauty. Well, maybe not that, but there is maybe a sort of in between.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And for the next conference is 2 p.m. in Amphi 180. Amphi 180, 14h.